If you're asked to write an essay on social inclusion, about pluralism, about group hegemony, these are the various headings that you can divide the topic into. So before that, let us look at ourselves as a part of the society. Now, human being is a social animal. It was believed that humans would have to interact with each other and are dependent on each other for survival. So man has always been craving for attention and craving for a sense of belonging. A sense of belonging could be anything. It could be a sense of belonging to a particular group, maybe the kind of care and attention that a person needs. And it could be in terms of its relationship with the outside world, it could be in terms of the opportunities that one gets. So, being a part of a group actually gives a person or a human being accessibility to a whole lot of things that a person may not be able to have access to in an individual nature. Having said that, this should not deny a person of individual freedom and autonomy. Now, these are not completely exclusive. There should be a proper balance between these two things. And that is where institutions have come into place. And coming to India, what is inclusiveness? Inclusiveness is where you include each and every stakeholder while making a decision. Now we have a majoritarian group, we have minorities, we have marginalized groups, we have a lot of people who do not come under discussion whenever a decision is being taken. Inclusiveness is wherein you're taking a decision and you're taking everybody's opinions into consideration, seeing that they do not suffer. Pluralism is where the ideas and necessities of each and every person, no matter how small in number they are, no matter how weak they're perceived to be, their ideas and their necessities are also taken into consideration. That is pluralism. Now, what is group hegemony doing? Now, from times immemorial, if you look at the history, whether it is of the world history or the Indian history, group hegemony is one thing that has created the history. It's always one group that is trying to gain an upper hand and trying to suppress the others perceived as a threat by them, resulting in various revolutions, wars, resulting in one occupying the other and ruling that nation for a long time. If you look at India, India got independence in 1947. But if you go back further and think about the reason why India lost independence in the first place, India was considered to be a rich country with diversified kingdoms. We were very different. India was a culture which accommodated too many differences. The thing is that we never identified ourselves as a nation. We were different kingdoms. We had our issues. We never gelled together with each other. We had our differences. And that was where colonialism played its part in dividing the nation further, deepening the fissures, and thus getting control over a large country, possibly the largest and much, much larger than their own homeland, much richer. A couple of traders coming from far off nation, coming and trying to occupy the entire country and have successfully done so, and have succeeded in convincing the entire world that this is how it is done, because Indians needed to be subjected to oppression, because Indians didn't have the character to rule themselves. And how did this happen? This happened because the Indian society was fractured in such a way, or structured in such a way, that we were very different from each other and we never believed that we all had a common interest. If you look at all the internal wars that were going on when British occupied India in the 16th and 17th centuries, you would know that very reason behind, or the reason behind why the Britain or the other countries were able to occupy us was nothing but the internal weaknesses that our societal order had, be it differences in religion, differences in caste, differences in region, differences in the way you identified themselves, no matter what it was. But people always had an opportunity to get into the internal differences that people had and then divide them, and it made it easier for them to occupy India. Divide and rule policy we have already studied in the past. So this Orientalism, the concept of Orientalism was brought forth, and people were made to believe that it was necessary that India need to be controlled, otherwise it was impossible. And after 200 years of maybe the colonial rule and after a lot of exploitation, India was capable of gaining its independence back. The only reason behind that was because India came together as a nation. The idea of nationalism was not there in the past. It was a Western concept. And if you look at the European countries, they were linguistically very, very different. Each country had their own language. Unlike India, ours is a multilingualistic society. So, homogenization of the society is perceived to be a strong point behind the unification of a particular societal group. But in contrast, India succeeded in coming together, irrespective of the differences that we had, be it in terms of religion, be it in terms of language, be it in terms of region, be it in terms of culture, ethics. Everyone had a common motto: to push back the colonialist rulers back to their country. And the only reason why India got independence from them is because India could sustain that kind of unity. But after independence, what happened? For 70 years, we were happy. I cannot say we were happy, but as a nation, we still believed in nationalism. We still had our differences, obviously. The 1947 massacre, the wildest of all, had seen numerous deaths. But then, Indians succeeded in staying together. The only reason was the character that Indians had. When India got independence, people believed that it was impossible to sustain this individual freedom of the country because India was so much divided that one group would fight with the other and end up breaking the country into pieces. Because one of the most difficult things in any revolution is to replace the existing dispensation with something which is more concrete, more acceptable to the stakeholders involved. And most of the revolutions have failed there. It was believed that India would also fail. It was challenged that India would not be able to come up with a constitution, but yet they did. They not only did, but succeeded in retaining this as a functional democracy for the next 70 plus years. And that is only possible only because the countrymen have believed that people and the institutions created by those people was something that we need to protect. We had an organization. We had people who respected the organization. We had people we believed in the constitution. We were the people who believed in unity. We had a clarity of thought that democracy was one of the biggest gifts that were given to us, and democracy is something that would keep us safe. So it is the people who actually protected themselves so far. And if there is anything that can damage us, it's not the external war or the external aggression, but the internal politics and the internal differences, the internal rebellions that were possibly brewing up. So what is to be done with that? Now, when you look at the colonial rule, they divided India into various parts on various groups according to their interests, that anything that would suit their economic and political interests. And based on that only we were divided. Constitution has given us a right to stay together. It had looked at the common interests that Indians had. It made it possible that we all had an idea of how the country should be run and which one would be the safest mode. It had given importance to each and every group. Inclusivity was one of the most important pillars. If you look at the directive principles of Indian policy, if you look at the fundamental rights, we always had instructions given to the government about how the country is to be run. Fundamental rights protects us from the unilateral actions of the government. But after what is happening, there are too many differences that are growing up, and we are actually concentrating on the differences rather than the positivities in staying together. Secularism is no more perceived as something which is necessary for the sustenance of this country. It is looked upon as an appeasement of the minorities. No, secularism is not about appeasement of minorities. Secularism gives a right to each and every person to practice the religion without any fear. It gives them the right to propagate their religion. It gives them the right to study their religion and then practice the religion without any fear. Having said that, ours is not an atheist nation like France, wherein people are prohibited from practicing their religion publicly. Ours is a country which gives us enough freedom to practice our religion and faith without any fear of being persecuted by any other group or by the government. And government takes up the responsibility that we practice our religion or faith without creating any nuisance to other people, without being disturbed by other people also. So in this scenario, the word secularism should not be looked upon as a word which is a threat. This is not a threat. This is something that will protect us. Digital media is playing a very important role. And if you look at how the information was spread in the past. It was through newspapers, it was through people discussing among themselves, it was panel discussions on the electronic media. But digital media is something which has given a power to the general public to air their views, also resulting in the spread of misinformation, manufacturing history, new history which the authenticity of which cannot be verified. Everything is coming up, and even before the veracity of the information can be confirmed and studied, the information is spread to such an extent that people believe that it is true. Not many of us have enough intelligence to differentiate between what is true and what is not true. And I think it's very important that whenever we receive any information, whether through social media or WhatsApp or anything else, we need to go into the truthfulness of the information, whether it is true or not, before we go into conclusions. There is a very strong urge to have a homogeneous society, because it is believed that homogeneity of the society would result in unity, and that gives strength. No, unity is coming through the character. Unity is something that you should believe in rather than homogenizing the entire society. You need to respect each and every person, irrespective of the differences. We should stop fearing the other half of the society. We should stop believing that the well being of the other group is a threat to our existence. If somebody is growing up well, it doesn't mean that we will be suppressed. And live and let live should be the policy behind our existence. And that is the reason why inclusiveness is very, very important in our society, especially in our country, in the society like ours. Pluralism, inclusiveness is very important and is antithetical to the concept of homogenization of the society. And digital media is making it very, very easy for the spread of misinformation, thus fracturing the society into so many fissures. It is almost impossible to get it back once the entire steel framework of unity of this country is broken. Thank you.